Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It is, by our count, which is the count from the first century that the Sadducees used. I don't usually go with what the Sadducees use, but in this case I do. It could be wrong, but by our count, Shavuot is tomorrow on Sunday. The rest of the world, I believe this year they had it yesterday, I think is when traditional Judaism has Shavuot. But be that as it may, nevertheless, Chag Sameach, which means happy festival to you. And we're on the last teaching of the counting of the Omer. This is the last teaching before Shavuot tomorrow. We've been on a 7-week countdown. We've gone through the 5 gifts. The apostle, we did the evangelist, then we did the pastor, then we did the prophet, then we did the teacher, and now the apostle. So this is probably going to be a fairly short teaching. Why? Because I'm an apostle and I can't interview myself. That would look weird. But nevertheless, that's what I'm teaching on, is the apostle. This probably has more weird doctrines associated with it than any other of the 5 gifts. I mean, you know, you can put pastor on a business card. I've even seen, strangely enough, I've seen business cards with prophet on it. And people love to say that person has a prophetic anointing, which is not scriptural. That is not a scriptural phrase. Sorry to tell you, but it's not. It shouldn't be said. Remember, there are 2 different things to think about. Number 1 is the gift, the matan. But the other thing is the sarad, the misrad, which is the office. I have been in the office of evangelist. I've been in the office of pastor because I'm a rabbi, and so I have to take care of the sheep. That's in the office of a pastor. I've been in the office of the prophet. I do not have a prophetic anointing, and I'm certainly not a prophet. But I've, been in the misrad, the office of a prophet, and what did I leave out? Teacher. Every week I'm in the office of a teacher. Every week. Actually, every day at school, because I'm a school teacher. So every day I'm in that office. But that's not me. That's not who I am at my core. At my core, my matan, my gift, is an apostle. So, the apostle's weird. I mean, there's just a lot of weird beliefs about it. Like somebody who's over a denomination, that's the apostle. And he's got all this authority because he's an apostle. Well, I got news for you. The apostle is the scum. The apostle's the bottom of the barrel. The apostle is the guy you send in to do all the dirty work. That's what an apostle is according to the scriptures. I'll show you that. So, let's go back to the beginning. The beginning that we have on every teaching is the 2 main passages. Number 1 is Leviticus 23. Leviticus 23 about the festivals, and we look at the portion about the counting of the Omer. And then the other one is Ephesians 4, which has the gifts, where Shaul is teaching from this time period of the counting of the Omer. Now, Leviticus 23, 15 through 16 says, "You shall count to you from the day after the Sabbath, from the day when you brought in the sheaf of the wave offering, there shall be 7 perfect or complete." I like perfect much better in Hebrew. Perfect Sabbaths. You shall count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath. Now that's the reason, and it says you shall count from the day after the Sabbath. The Sadducees said it was the weekly Sabbath. That's why we can have 7 of them. And the Pharisees said, no, it's talking about the Shabbaton, not of Passover. There's no such thing as a Shabbaton of Passover, of Hag HaMatzah. And people still get this confused after all these years of there being Jews and Messianic Jews teaching about the difference between Passover and Hag HaMatzah. We still get it wrong. Everybody still gets this wrong. It's not Passover. Passover is the day before, where the lamb is killed. Hag HaMatzah is what we celebrate. Hag HaMatzah is what we have when we get together at night, and we don't have Passover, we have Hag HaMatzah. So the Pharisees say that this day after Shabbat, that Shabbat is the Shabbat of Hag HaMatzah. The Sadducees said no, it's regular weekly Shabbat. And then in Ephesians chapter 4, I know there's a lot of stuff out on the internet about this. I've read almost all of it. I didn't have time to read all of it, but I read a lot over the last weeks and over the last years. And it's unfortunate, but I have to say it. I've never once found anyone teaching about the gifts in the body of Messiah from Judaism. It has been detached from its Jewish moorings. And we need to get it reconnected back to its Jewish moorings. Where did it come from? It came from the counting of the Omer. If you put it back together with counting of the Omer, more than likely you're going to end up with the same kind of stuff that I've come up with. More than likely. To each one of us, a gift was given according to the measure of Messiah's grace. Actually, this word grace or gift, it means gracious giving. So it's kind of a mixture of the two. That's why I have gift, grace. Gracious giving. Therefore, he gave gifts to men that he might fill all things. And he gave some apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors and teachers to the building up of the body of Messiah to a perfect man, to the measure of the fullness of Messiah. There's a lot of clue words in there that link it back to counting of the Omer. And I've dropped out 3/4 of the content of this passage. It's so wordy. And this is a lot of the reason that people get tripped up on it. It's really hard to follow. Well, I trimmed it down to the basics so that we can try to follow it. Now let's go back to this passage in Leviticus. The Omer count is personal. This is what you should have been doing for the last 7 weeks. If you didn't, you can do it next year. Usfartem lachem, and you shall count to you. This is lachem, plural to you. It's the same exact word that has been destroyed. This doctrine has been destroyed by Judaism. It's just wrong. It's upside down and backwards. And so the church followed suit. What we destroyed in Judaism is the kosher laws. People think that there's food and then there's unclean animals. No. People think that there's such a thing as clean food and unclean food. No. People think that God said that animal is unclean. No. This never took place. In Leviticus 11, it says this word, lachem, 13 times. And so what do? Completely ignore it in Judaism. It's just ridiculous. Over and over and over. You know, Jews are so obsessive compulsive about the Torah. Oh, it repeated twice. We're going to write a book about it. But it repeats 13 times and we go, what? What did he say? Who knows? I don't know. Come on. I mean, it's ridiculous. An animal, like a reptile or a bird or a pig or a beast or a camel or a rabbit or whatever, God says it shall be unclean to you. It's not unclean. Pigs are not unclean. They're unclean to us if we choose for it to be. And God says he wants Israel to make that thing, to consider that thing as, it has several words, unclean. It says it shall be detestable, lechem, to you, or an abomination, lechem, to you. Take your pick. Actually, you can't take your pick. It tells us which ones are supposed to be. So, this time period, the counting is to you. It's an invitation. Make it to you. Make it personal. That's what it's for. Therefore, the rabbi said that this means one should apply the counting of the Omer to oneself. It's a personal act. And then it says in that same passage that the Shabbat shall be Shabbatot Emote, which means 7 perfect Sabbaths. Not complete so much in Hebrew as perfect, and it is perfect. It means filled up as full as it can get. Can't fill it anymore. Shabbatot Emote, or Sabbaths complete, or perfect. Sabbaths perfect. The process is done to the barley harvest, and then the wheat harvest is a perfecting or a refining. Well, if it's to lachem, if it's to you, that means the perfecting is to a human, not so much to flour or to grain. And that's the whole point of this. The bottom line is this. The bottom line is this. This happened a couple years ago where they made a makeshift altar in Jerusalem. And they offered this, see this little container? That's the Omer. And this priest is offering the Omer on the fire at during counting of the Omer. So this is the whole bottom line. This is Yeshua. This is you. This is God. So the whole point is for Yeshua to be able to offer to God something perfect. His body. It ain't perfect. It's supposed to be being perfected. And that's the whole trick, is to use this time to change. Now here's the physical that we've been looking at. It's from the Mishnah Menachot, which means bread offerings, 10:4. They reaped it. Now, when it says they, it's talking about priests, always priests. The priests went out, they reaped it, they cut it down. That's the evangelist. They put it in baskets. They brought those to the temple court, brought it to the house of God. The sages say they used to thresh it with reeds and stalks of plants, that the grains should not be crushed. That's the pastor. Threshing is the most violent act in all of agriculture. But in this case, it was done gently, specifically so it wouldn't damage the grain, the heads of grain. That's the pastor. The person first comes into the house of God. First thing that happens to him, pastor shows up as a friend and spanks him. That's what's supposed to happen. The reeds and stalks of plants, so the grains should not be crushed. And then they put the grains in a copper tube. The tube was perforated so that the fire should prevail throughout all the grains. This is the prophet. The prophet opens their mouth because they are seers. They see something. They see something from God, usually bad. Remember, prophets very rarely see good. They see bad. And then they open their mouth and they say it, and it's supposed to roast us. Every single member of the body. Every single member. So if you're not hearing from God through a prophet, you're not hearing God. The reason I say that is because it says in Amos that God does nothing unless he first reveals it to his servants, the prophets, the Nevi'im, or the Roe, the seer, Roe. So that's the prophet. And then they spread it out in the temple court, let the wind blow over it. Sounds just like they gently place it and then the wind comes. It's not like that. They had to throw it up in the air with winnowing forks. That's the teacher. Why? Because the teacher's job is to separate. Remember, one of the words for teachers, separation. And separates the good from the bad. Chaff is blown away. The garbage from the body is blown away. And the good doctrine drops into a heap. And that's what we keep and that's what we offer from. And then they put it in a grist mill and remove from it 1/10 of an ephah. That's not one of the processes. That's between two rocks. Well, there's about 10 passages in the Torah that describes God as our rock, our selah, our tsur, 2 different words for rock. God is the rock, 2 different words for rock. 2, tsur and selah. There are 2 rocks in between. The grain is crushed to turn it into flour. So that's not counted among the processes that the priest did. That's counted among the processes that God does, because he's the rock. After it is turned from grain into flour, now comes the final step. Now comes the final process that's done to get that Omer, that little container, offered to God. And that is, it was sifted through 13 sieves. Why 13? It doesn't mean 13 sieves that are all the same. It means 13 sieves that get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter until it is absolutely perfect. And then a gizbar, which is a treasurer, the gizbarim are the treasurers. A gizbar would stick his hand into the flour, and if it stuck to his hand, still not ready. But if it didn't stick to his hand, it's ready to offer. It's perfect. No impurities whatsoever. And here is the Omer. It's very small. 2 quarts, around 2 quarts. And it's small offering. And that's a human. Remember when God gave the manhu, the manna? Everybody gathered, didn't matter if they gathered a tiny bit or they gathered 50 pounds. Everybody ended up with 1 Omer. And that was a picture for God to say, you are an Omer. That's what you're worth. You are an Omer. Every person is an Omer. And so Yeshua, because he, we call it the body of Messiah. Well, that means it's him. He's 1 Omer. So we have the evangelist, the pastor, the prophet, the teacher, and now the apostle. And these matanot, these gifts, not offices, these gifts, these matanot, are what fill the measure. That little 2 quarts, fill that measure every day for 49 days until tomorrow, which is Shavuot. Now, in Ephesians chapter 4, it says this. It says, to each one of us was given. I have rarely met anybody who believes this. Rarely. If we really believe that to every single person, believer and unbeliever, Jew and Gentile, man and woman, everybody, that to everybody was given one of these gifts, if we really believe that, we probably wouldn't treat each other the way we do. I mean, this changed the way I treat people. It took a long time, but it changed the way I treat people. Because I want to get from them what they can give me. It's totally selfish on my part, but it works. I don't care if it's selfish, it works. Yeshua said, you need to receive. If you receive a prophet in the name of a prophet, you'll receive a prophet's reward. If you receive a righteous man in the name of a righteous man, you'll receive, that's a tzaddik. If you receive a tzaddik in the name of a tzaddik, you'll receive a tzaddik's reward. Totally different in Judaism than it is in Christianity. Righteous man, this guy's a really good guy. Not in Judaism. In Judaism, a tzaddik is a miracle worker. It's a rabbi who is so righteous that every single thing out of his mouth is God talking to you. If you receive a tzaddik, which assumes that there are tzaddikim, if you receive a tzaddik in the name, in the authority of a tzaddik, you'll get what that tzaddik can give you. If you receive an apostle in the name of an apostle, you'll get what an apostle can give you. If you receive a pastor in the name of a pastor, you will get from that pastor what they can. So if we really believe that to every single person got one of these matanot, if we believe that, we'd be looking for it. I've rarely met anybody who believes this. It's hard to do. But I think we really need to think about this and be moving toward it. So the harvest was the evangelist, the threshing was the pastor, the roasting is the prophet, the winnowing is the teacher. The wind blows away the chaff and the grain is good, separates the good grain. And then now comes the sifting, the apostle. Repeatedly refining until perfect. Doesn't that sound fun? Doesn't that sound fun to be around? A guy or a girl who repeatedly refines until perfect. That's what we're going to talk about. And remember, we are not talking about a misrad, an office. We are not talking about the office. Oh, that guy prophesies. He must be a prophet. No, he might be, maybe, but he might be in the office of a prophet. I've been told by so many Messianic Jews, oh, you're prophetic, you're a prophet. And I have to tell them, well, actually, I'm not a prophet, I'm an apostle. That's my gift. And that opens up all kinds of problems to talk about, but I will not let people tell me I'm a prophet. I'm not a prophet. And then I'll tell them a prophet is a seer. I never see anything. I never see anything. I'm not like that. I'm going to talk about that. So you need to figure out what your gift is, and you need to figure out what other people's gift is. Now here's the apostle. I don't have a scripture here. I had a scripture here for every other gift, but I don't have one for the apostle. And there's a reason for that. This cuts to the heart of why I will never have a big following. And it cuts to the heart of why I will never, what this amazing thing that God has given me, Tabniot, pictures, why it will never be a big thing with a lot of people. I'm selling a product nobody wants. And I know that. I've been doing it for 35 years. And I know this. And it's never going to get big. Tabniot, the simple understanding that all of Judaism is a set of pictures or shadows cast by Yeshua. All of it. It's never going to be big. But it is the truth. It is the most important thing in the scriptures. It's the most important thing for everybody who's a believer to understand. But it's never going to be big. And the reason is the Bible doesn't say it. The Bible says it in 1,000, 100,000 different ways. But the Bible never says it. It's kind of like, reading the Bible to define for us how to bind a Bible book. How do we do the cover? How do we do the pages? What's the layout of the book? You're not going to find that in the Bible. It's ridiculous. This is stuff that we have to determine. If we want to determine anything biblical, we have to determine it by putting together hundreds of passages. Well, it's like that with the apostle. It's like that with pictures. It gives us clues, many, 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 tens of thousands of clues. But it doesn't come right out and tell us what we're supposed to know. Why? Because remember last week, talking about the teacher, anything we get from God, we got to dig for it. God does not hand us things on a silver platter. He makes us dig for it and search for it. And then it means something so much more to us. Well, there is a phrase in Judaism, the ways of Judah. There is a phrase in Judaism that tells us, that kind of calls together all the scriptures about the apostle. I'm talking about in the Tanakh, in the Old Testament, not in the New Testament. And this is what it says. The main point of the Jewish law of agency, that's the key, is expressed in the dictum: a person's agent is regarded as the person himself. Now this is from the Encyclopedia of the Jewish Religion, fantastic book by Zvi Werblowski, under agent. Well, you say agent to a Christian, it doesn't really mean a whole lot. It's kind of hard to tell what it is. What is that, a secret agent? In Judaism, it's huge. It is anybody sent out with Judaism. We'll talk more about that. Here's the drive of the apostle. I'm going to get from point A to point B. It doesn't matter what's in my way. I'm getting from point A to point B. The mission. The mission is critical. Just like with the teacher, the information is all. People, who cares? In this case, the mission is all. People, who cares? Problems, who cares? It doesn't matter. That's my point. I'm going to get there. You can't keep me from getting there. That's what we're going to talk about. So here's the things that we're going to go through. It's going to be a rather short teaching today. We're going to go through the fact that God sifted Israel. Remember, the sifting through 13 sieves was a picture to teach us. And so, God sifted Israel, and then he will sift the Gentiles in the day of the Lord. We're going to look at that. The apostle, the shaliach in Hebrew, is sent out. He's the sent one. That's an agent. And then this is, if you're going to turn your YouTube off, turn it off now, because this is the part that's going to get you. And it's going to take me a while to explain this, but I'm not going to spend a super long time on it. I just can't. I can't. Either you're going to be open to hear it with an open mind, or you're not. And there's nothing really I can do about that. So, here's what it is. Jesus was not God while he was on earth, but he's God. That's what we're going to talk about. And then we're going to talk about the apostles. They have to be in existence now. There have to be apostles now. In Christianity, I've heard it for many, many, many years, that the apostles were then. There were 12 apostles, y no más. That's it, all done. That's insanity. And I'll talk about why that's insanity. So there have to be apostles now to bring order to the kingdom. The order of the kingdom into the body. Then we're going to talk about this, that the apostle wants to get point A to point B. That's what it's all about. And then the apostle wants to remove impurity. That's the sifting. 13 sieves to take out more and more and more and more impurity until it's absolutely perfect. And then the apostle usually will work together with a prophet. Why? We'll talk about this. The apostle doesn't see anything, but the prophet is nothing but a seer. So they work together well. And then the apostle is relentless, like Nandor the Relentless. The apostle is absolutely relentless. You cannot turn them away from the goal. It's almost impossible. It's possible, but it's almost impossible. And then the last thing, the apostle will try anything. Just try anything. Very down-to-earth concept. That's what we're going to end with. So let's talk about the sifting. Now, in Isaiah chapter 30, God is talking about Israel, and then he talks about the day of the Lord. But in the first portion, when he's talking about the sifting, he is not talking about the day of the Lord. And this is going to be repeated in Amos. In Isaiah chapter 30, let's start in verse 26. This is about the day of the Lord. This is about the birth pangs. The light of the moon will be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun will be 7 times brighter, like the light of 7 days. On the day the Lord binds up the fracture of his people. This is at the end of the birth pangs, and it's a title. Day the Lord binds up the fracture of his people. That's a title for the day of the Lord. And heals the bruise of his afflicted. And then it flops, it switches. And then the camera angle turns from the kingdom and comes back to before the kingdom. Behold, the name of the Lord comes from a remote place, burning in his anger and dense in his smoke. This sounds like the birth pangs. Burning in his anger and dense in his smoke. His lips are filled with indignation, and his tongue is like a consuming fire. This is the birth pang. This is God coming in fire, right? And his breath is like a torrent, an overflowing torrent. That means like a river that's flooding. And it reaches all the way up to the neck. The water comes all the way up to the neck. It's that deep. To shake the Gentiles back and forth in a sieve. To put in the jaws of the peoples the bridle that leads to ruin. This is definitely the birth pangs. But it's not the birth pangs to Israel. It's the birth pangs to the Gentiles. This is the birth pangs on the Gentiles. God judging the Gentiles. But to Israel, it says something else that's not in the birth pangs. Excuse me. You will have songs as in the night when you keep the festival, a gladness of heart as when one marches to the sound of the flute, to go to the mountain of the Lord, to the rock of Israel. So now, it's not in the birth pangs, it's in the kingdom. But it's also before that. It's also like the history of Israel, where God is caring for his people. It doesn't look like it, but God is caring for his people Israel. All the way up until the end of the birth pangs, when then you get to enter the kingdom. But here, this sifting, it's Gentiles in that sieve. Well, I thought the grain was Israel. I thought the grain was the body of Messiah. Yes, but it's also, remember, every festival and every detail of every festival is prophetic of the day of the Lord. Every one of them, every tiny detail of the festivals is prophetic. And so is this, that the sifting is also prophetic of the birth pangs for the Gentiles, but not the birth pangs for the Jews. That's not what the sifting is for. I'll show you that. Amos chapter 8 repeats sort of the same concept. And then, I'm not going to talk about it right now, but Yeshua quotes this verse, and he quotes this verse and talks about Israel being regathered. Amos chapter 8, verse 23. There is no 8:23. I got the wrong chapter. I don't know where it is. I got. Sorry about that. Maybe it's not Amos. Maybe it's a different book. Well, I'm sorry about that. But what it says is, "Behold, I'm establishing it. I will shake the house of Israel among all nations." Like this, like a sieve, like they're in the sieve, and he kind of shakes it so that the Jews go into all the nations. Now, this is not the birth pangs. This is before this is the history of Israel. This is before the birth pangs. This is before the day of the Lord. And so that God kind of got all of Israel in this sieve. How many sieves are there? 13. Why? Because there's 13 tribes. There's not 12 tribes, there's 13 tribes, because Joseph had Ephraim and Manasseh. 13 sieves for 13 tribes. And he just kind of shook them.
Amos 9:9.
Amos 9:9. Thank you very much, Doug. Appreciate that. Behold, let's go to verse 8. "The eyes of the Lord are on the sinful kingdom, and I will destroy it from the face of the earth. Nevertheless, I will not totally destroy the house of Jacob." So he's in the birth pangs talking about this nation that's going to be completely destroyed. And then he backs up and he goes to before the day of the Lord, and he talks about what he's going to do with Israel. He's going to put them in a sieve, shake them amongst the Gentiles. The Jews were put into every nation on the planet. And why? So that they could be in all the world and teach all the world. And then they will be regathered. But look what it says. It says they'll be in among the nations as grain is shaken in a sieve, but not one kernel will fall to the ground. Well, if you're shaking it and they're coming out, aren't they supposed to hit the ground? It doesn't mean that. It means that they won't be lost. The only reason I know this is because Yeshua quotes it. And he says, "And so none of my sheep, none of my Jews will be lost. None of them." And that's the truth. Not one kernel will get buried in the dirt and not be found. Israel will come back to God and come back to the land and come back to the Torah and come back to the temple and come back to Yeshua and come back to worshiping God as they were supposed to. It's going to happen because God's going to find every single kernel that has dropped from those sieves. That's the purpose of the sieves. What? To perfect. To perfect. Remember, it's the junk that gets stuck in the sieve. The good stuff drops. The junk stays in the sieve. All right, Luke 22:31. It's a strange verse. "Shimon, Shimon, behold, Hasatan is demanded to sift you like wheat." What do you think he's talking about? What do you think he's quoting? Remember, the Word became flesh. What word in the Tanakh is this? It's this. He's quoting here Amos 8:23. That Hasatan, 9:9, thank you. Hasatan wants to do this. That's not Hasatan's job. That's God's job. He does that with Israel, not Hasatan. He was above his pay grade. All right, now let's talk about the shaliach. The shaliach. This was the thing I found. Yes, sir, I might start crying because, I've known I'm an apostle for about 28 years, 27 years, something like that. And I've been studying it and seeing it in the Bible, but I never saw this. And I couldn't believe what I found. It made me very happy. A shaliach means a sent one who's sent forth. It comes from the word shalach, which means to send out, to extend, to send away, to let loose, to shoot an arrow. What does that sound like? From last week? The teacher is the same word. The teacher, remember, yoreh means to shoot out like an arrow. This means the same thing. So there is some overlap with the teacher and the apostle. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes if a person, that happened last week with my friend Doug. We thought he was an apostle, and as we started talking about the teacher, it became very clear, no, he's a teacher, and he saw it. Well, it's kind of hard to separate the teacher from the apostle because they both go out very directly, very clearly with a purpose. Numbers 13, about the 12 spies, nothing could be further from the truth. This is really amazing. It says, I'm not going to read it from the Bible. I'm just going to talk about it. It says this. It says, "Send out lacha, shalach lacha, send out to you men to wander, or order, or make rows, and encircle the land." Shalach lacha, and then this word for order, shalach, to make rows, to encircle the land. It's not shalach, sorry. Well, we'll talk about it. So there's two different things here. God tells Moshe, send them out. They're apostles. Shalach lecha, send men out. How many are there? 12. They are the 12 apostles. The 12 apostles are not in the New Testament. The 12 apostles are in the Old Testament. Remember I told you there's no verse that says these guys are apostles? In the Tanakh, you've got to cull together all these concepts in the Torah to understand these things. So he says, shaliach, shalach, send out, make 12 apostles. And then he says, have them, what they translate as spy, bad translation. Have them wander, order, make rows, or encircle. These are all four good translations of the word yitur. Like tour. Like we're going to go on a bicycle tour. It's the same word. That's where it came from. To tour. Tour. So, the 12 apostles, shalach lecha anashim v'yituru, is what it says. V'yituru. And whatever tour is, that's what they were to do. Not spy. Spy is really bad translation. It means, it's the word tour, it means to wander, to search, or to explore. Now look at this. Spelled the same way but pronounced a little bit differently is tor. And it's onomatopoetic. It's this. Tor. Tor. It's a pigeon or a rock dove. Tor. And that has one letter added to it, very next word in the concordance. Guess what it is? Torah. To wander, to search, to explore, to order. To order. Now this word, Torah, it has two meanings. It means a turtle dove or a rock pigeon. It's translated turtle dove, which is really ridiculous. It shouldn't be turtle dove. There's nothing turtle about it. It's kosher. It's a rock dove or a pigeon. And its second meaning is to order a row or a turn. You know, like when you're making furrows in a field, and you make that turn back and forth. That's a tour. You're making a tour. Tour. And then it means a string of pearls or a string of gold or silver beads. Why? Because it's an order. Order, 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 order. It's order. It's a row. There's a row. There's another row of beads. Ooh, that's pretty. There's another row of beads. Torah. Torah. You go through one cycle, read the Torah. You go through another cycle, read the Torah. Then you add another cycle and read the Torah. Then you add another cycle and read the Torah. Over and over and over again. Plowing the field back and forth until you get what you're supposed to get. Year after year. Torah. That's why the Torah is kosher. That's why it was a rock dove, a pigeon, and not a turtle dove that came down on Yeshua as the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is the Torah. The Torah and the Spirit are one. And so when it came down on him, it came down in the form of a Torah. Tor. Order. 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 This is the obsession, which you will see, of the apostle. We are obsessed with order, which you will see. Because we're sent out to do a thing, whatever that thing is. We're sent out to do a mission. Well, think about it. That's what Judaism is. It's God sending out his people as apostles to spread the ways of God. The Torah, the Spirit, both together. Man, this gets me excited. And this was the thing I found. I never saw that in Jusinius and the lexicon and the concordance that the very next word after turtle dove, ridiculous, rock dove, is Torah. And that it means order. I mean, this thrills me. Now, let's talk about this being the sent one. Matthew 10:40. He who receives you receives me. He who receives me receives him who sent me. So God sends Yeshua. Yeshua sends the shlachim, the apostles, and if you receive that guy, you receive this guy. If you receive that guy, you receive this guy. It's order. And this is how things work. It's authority. If you receive my words as coming from God, then you're receiving God. Pretty simple. But he says, God sent me. I am the apostle. I am the agent of God. Whoever receives me does not receive me, really, but receives the one who sent me. Same concept. He's saying, I am the sent one. God sent me. I didn't come because I, am a great pastor. I came because God sent me. I am the apostle. I am the shaliach. Luke 4:43, but he said to them, I must preach the kingdom of God to the other cities too, because I was sent for this purpose. I'm the shaliach for this goal, to preach all throughout Israel the Malchut Shemayim, the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven. Luke 10:16, the one who rejects you isn't really rejecting you, rejecting me. And the one who rejects me isn't really rejecting me, rejecting the one who sent me. I am the shaliach, I'm the sent one. Galatians 1:1. Now Paul says he himself is a shaliach, and he even uses the word agent. Paul, an apostle, not sent from men, not through the agency of man. This is in the New Testament. And remember, I told you it's from Judaism that they got the concept of the agent. This came from putting together hundreds of passages about the shaliach. And from this, somehow magically, they came up with the word agency. Well, so did Paul. Gee, I wonder how that works. Paul was a Jew, and he was writing from Judaism. He says, Paul is a shaliach, not sent, shalach, from people, nor through the agency of man, but through Yeshua the Messiah and God the Father. What does that mean? That means that Paul was Yeshua. Yeshua was God. Remember the agency. The statement of agency is the one who sent the apostle. The apostle is that person who sent him. Is them. Not just like is like them. Is them. So Paul is saying this. Paul's saying, I was sent. I'm Yeshua. I'm Yeshua for you. And Yeshua is not Yeshua. Yeshua is God for you. So if you accept me as an apostle, you'll get what an apostle can give you. Pretty simple. Hebrews 3:1-2. Now look at this. Therefore, brothers, consider Yeshua the shaliach. Comes right out and tells us. He is ha-shaliach, the apostle, and high priest of what we profess, and acknowledge he was faithful to the one who sent him out. Yeshua was not God on earth. This is why Jews don't believe in Yeshua. It's not because they're horrible people. It's because Christians don't understand the shaliach. And they go around saying, oh, Jesus is God. He's our God. No, he's not. That's absurdity. It's idolatry. He was not God. He's God, but he was not God on earth. Let me explain. The main point of the Jewish law of agency is expressed in the dictum, a person's agent is regarded as the person himself. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. If you've seen Shaul, you've seen Yeshua. If you've seen Philip, if you've seen Bartholomew, if you've seen Thomas, if you've seen the other apostles, you've seen Yeshua. Over and over. This is I've written this. This is in When All the Pictures Are Restored. My wife told me just when we were doing the prophet teaching, she said, just read what you got in the book. Just read the chapter. And I was like, I would love to, but I don't think that's going to get it across, because anybody can do anything they want with my words. But if I explain my words, they have less of a chance to not understand what I've written. So I think little snippets is probably better. She may have been right, I don't know. But this seems to work for me anyway. So I've got these little snippets in the book. When All the Pictures Are Restored, this is under the Counting of the Omer chapter, page 401. Over and over, Yeshua described himself as being sent by the Father. He was saying that he was the agent or shaliach of God, sent out as God. The gift and calling of the apostle gives the perfect description of Yeshua, better than any other words could possibly describe him. While Yeshua was on earth, he was not God. He was God before he came to live as a Jew. He was shown to be God in his resurrection. It says that in Romans 1. After he had lived and died as a Jew. Look at the bold letters in the previous sentences. He was not God. He was shown to be God. They're complete opposites, but they are both simultaneously true. While Yeshua lived as a man, he was a Jew. He had to pray to God. And though I believe unshakably in the, quote, deity of Yeshua, in other words, that Yeshua is God, I also understand that Yeshua was not God while on earth. If this sounds contradictory, it's no more contradictory than saying that Yeshua was fully God and fully man. A statement made in every church and seminary the world over countless times a day. Why can't I say this? Christians say that. The difference is this. I'm teaching it from Judaism. This is why Jews don't believe in Yeshua. Because they believe that Jesus was God. And he wasn't. He was their God. I'm a school teacher. I'm with kids all day. And kids, especially around Christmas time, hundreds of times a day, they say, I was drawing a picture of God. Not in my class. You got to do a composition. And I teach them about composition. But they say this. They believe this. This guy with the long blonde hair, they believe it's their God. And because of this foolish, evil belief, because that's what it is, it's from hell, Christians then ended up making war on Jews and killing them in the name of this God. That's why Jews don't believe in Yeshua. It's the number one reason. It's hard to get over. This is really hard to get over for both Jews and Christians. But this will bring us together, both Jews and Christians, if you can get a hold of it. Yeshua was the shaliach. He was a Jew. He was, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Well, any shaliach could say that if they were sent by God. And Yeshua was. All right, now let's talk about this. Shaking. Shaking in a sieve. Remember, everything in the processes of the counting of the Omer are prophetic. This is God doing this. These are people coming out. being refined. We're supposed to do this with each other. And I was thinking about this. I was thinking about being shaken. That's not a good thing in the Bible. There's all these verses that say, I will not be shaken. I got a couple of them here. Cast your burden upon the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never allow the righteous to be shaken. So God will never do this. Psalm 62:6. He only is my rock and my salvation. My stronghold, I will never be shaken. Obviously, this is a different concept from this. Now, I've got something else written here from my Pictures Restored book. This is from page 404. The reason I wrote this is this. I can't figure out how to get to this and make it make sense. I've been told, I don't know, maybe 400 times in 38 years, something like that, that God doesn't treat us today like he treated the Jews. That something has changed. And all you have to do really is read the New Testament. Those words tell us everything we need to know. Just read the New Testament. It'll change you. I read the New Testament, it didn't change me at all, not one bit. And here's why. All I got to do when I'm reading the words of Peter or Paul or Yeshua is go like this. I don't like that. And turn the page. And I'm done. And Christians do this 1,000,000 times a day with the Torah. And then they go, I don't need it. There's a lot of bad things in Judaism. There's a lot of impurities mixed in. Well, who are you? That's way above your pay grade. Who are you? I'm a rabbi that studies this stuff and it changes me. Who are you to talk about impurities in Judaism? Who are you? You have no authority to do that. I've studied it for decades and I won't even do that. What I'll do is look at it for the beauty that it is and allow it to change me. That's authority. There is no authority in standing back and judging God's people. There's no authority in standing back and judging, quote, Judaism. There's no authority in it. There is an authority in looking at what God gave us as Jews and letting it change you. And that requires something. That requires you to get your nose in the book and keep it there. And if you don't like what you read, too bad. But with the New Testament, people don't look at it as harsh and mean as the Old Testament. And so they look at those words and they embrace it. Oh, it's so full of love. No, it's not. It's Jewish doctrine in the New Testament. You just don't know what they're saying. When I read the New Testament, I read those harsh words. And sometimes I'll let it change me. Sometimes. Sometimes I won't, admittedly, because I'm a jerk. That's another story. But I'm going to read this. If an apostle is defined as someone who knew Yeshua in the flesh and was one of the disciples, as I've heard it defined many times in Christian circles, Christians many, many times, for 38 years I've heard this. Actually for 41 now. Tomorrow is my spiritual birthday. I was born again on Shavuot in 1979. It's 41 years. For 41 years, I have heard Christians say the apostles were in the New Testament. Y no más. No more. It's done. Well, if that were true, if it was true, then it is they and only they, the apostles of the New Testament, who had the ability to sift the body of Messiah. This is the job of the apostle, to sift. There must be humans who can work within the Omer to sift it, to question, to teach the Torah, to judge, to dig, and search for the truth. Paul and Peter and Andrew and John can't do that for us today. They can't argue with us. They can't get in our face and confront us and disagree with us and correct us. All we have to do is turn the page. And their words disappear. If there is no one to sift the grain, then all kinds of impurities will stay in the Omer that is offered to God. Isn't that exactly what has happened? The Hellenism and paganism, bad doctrine, has gone unsifted and unremoved from the Omer for the last 2,000 years. This is why I do what I do. I am an apostle. My job is to sift the Omer. That's my job. If you don't like it, turn the page. Turn off the YouTube. Whatever. Don't watch. Go somewhere else. This is my job. Who are you? Who are you to judge the impurities in Israel? Leave that for the apostles. Even a cursory study of history shows us that much of what the body of Messiah has offered to God has been pagan in origin, if not in practice. See my smile? That's why I do this with a smile. We're talking about 2,000 years of garbage. Well, somebody's got to do the sifting. I have said, okay, Lord, I'll shake the sieve, and then another sieve, and another sieve, and another sieve, and another sieve, 13 of them. I'll do it. Well, if you don't like it, that's fine. But that's my job. Let me do my job. Now, the shaliach is sent to bring the order. Remember the word tur, the dove, the rock dove, the pigeon, which was the picture that the Holy Spirit came down on Yeshua in the form of a pigeon, not a dove, not those white doves that everybody shows. That's not true. It was a pigeon, a rock dove, a tur, and that means Torah. It's a very same word as Torah, order, mode, manner. So here, Moshe sends out 12 apostles, and he sends them out to order the land, Now, they didn't do it. They did the wrong thing. They went around the land, and they came back and said, I didn't see anything. All I saw was bad. Not what they were supposed to do, but that's what they did. They were bad apostles. Now, in 1 Chronicles 26, 29 through 30, David's shlachim were sent out to bring David's kingdom out beyond the border of David's kingdom. And isn't that what we are supposed to do? As for the Israelites, Hananiah and his sons were assigned to duties outside duties for Israel, as officers and judges. As for the Hebronites, 1,700 capable men had charge of the affairs of Israel beyond the Jordan westward, and for all the work of the Lord and the service of the king. Jews read this and go, apostle, the agent. These are the agents. 1,700 of the Hebronites, and then a whole bunch of other Israelites, and then Hananiah and his sons. And I think it tells how many, but I'm not sure. So we're talking about thousands of shlachim are being sent out as David. They are David. 2,000 Davids coming. Here comes David. Oh, there's David, there's David, there's David. He's everywhere. Remember, the agency is that the one who sends him out is as the one who sent him. He is the one who sent him. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. If you've seen me, you've seen David. 2 Chronicles 17. Yehoshaphat did the same thing, same exact thing. He sent out his shlachim. In the 3rd year of his reign, he sent his officials, Ben Hayil, Ovadiah, Zechariah, and then it lists a whole bunch more, to teach in the cities of Judah. So you think they're teachers, right? In the cities of Judah, and with them the Levites, and with them the Kohanim, the priests. They taught in Judah, having the Torah scroll of the Lord with them. And they went throughout all the cities of Judah and taught among the people. This is what Yeshua was quoting when he said, you must go out into all of Israel and preach the kingdom of God. This became flesh when he did that. So they're shlachim. Now, remember, there's the matan, the gift, and then there's the misrad, the office. I don't know if all these guys were just in the office of the apostle. Could have been. Or if they were all also the gifted apostle. I don't know. Probably the office, but who knows. But nevertheless, they were shlachim who went out. Hundreds, thousands of them. In this case, it's beyond the Yarden to the Gentiles. In this case, it's only amongst the Jews in Israel. Very amazing. Now, let's talk about what the obsession is. The obsession of the apostle is to get this order into our life. A lot of people call it obsessive compulsive. A lot of people call it autistic. I'm on the spectrum. Most apostles I've ever met are on the spectrum. But it's an obsession. It's like, I've got to get that in order. Oh no, my kids make fun of me constantly. Oh no, like that. Like I turn into, like I've lost my mind. I turn into somebody who's not even on this earthly plane when I see something out of order. They make fun of me. Of course, we're exaggerating it, but that's how it is. I cannot stand to see something out of order. I have to get it into order. All the apostles I've met are the same way. This is not me. This is not a Michael Washer problem. This is an apostle problem. It's like, I see that out of order, I'm going to do what it takes to get that in order. They call them people in the army. They call them Marines. There's a mission, and you're not going to keep me from getting that mission accomplished. And here's how we think. Here's how the obsession works. Order from small to large, from slow to fast, from weak to strong, from simple to complex, whatever. It's a logic, it's an order. When I'm counseling with people, they'll be talking and I'm just like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then they say something that's like, hey, that's out of order. You were going along a track. It was getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and all of a sudden you went back to small. What happened? And then I key in on that, and that ends up being the problem. That's just one out of a billion examples. But nevertheless, that's how it works. It works by order. Now, the apostle gets from point A to point B. That's all they care about, like an arrow. You're shot out on a trajectory, and you got to hit that target, and nothing else in the universe matters. This is a problem. Nothing else in the universe matters. People don't matter. Feelings don't matter. Worse than the teacher, I think. The teacher just cares about the information, but the apostle cares about the mission. I got to get this accomplished, and I'll do whatever it takes to get that accomplished. And if you're in my way, oh well, you're going to get run over. Now, this is how I ran the congregation that we had, that God started, and I screwed up. God started it, and then I proceeded to screw the whole thing up. The reason I screwed it up, the way I screwed it up, was because I had to get to point B. That's what God has told me to do. And it might have been. God might have showed me point B. He might have. But I didn't care about the people in the process. I mean, I thought I did. Of course, nobody sets out to be a jerk. I thought I did. I really thought I cared about people. I mean, I would work so hard. I'd turn myself inside out. I would stay up all night long if that's what it took. I would do anything for people. But I didn't care about them, ultimately. I cared about the mission. I'll give you an example. My favorite thing when we had our congregation, absolutely favorite thing, you're going to think this is nuts, was stomping. Stomping, let's play stomping. That means stump me. And it was Bible trivia. If you can stump me, woo, I'm going to give you a present. And we would do this at Hanukkah. And we'd have all kinds of gifts, and I'd give people gifts if they could win the Bible trivia. But they never could. I always won. And the reason was that for me, Torah study, or Bible study, was like an apostle. Get from point A to point B. I got to get that goal. I got to find that thing. I got to find that nut. And so I would, Bible trivia was like, you couldn't fool me. And this was ridiculous. I remember very clearly a lot of, good Torah students. They would go, okay, I got one, Rabbi. The grandson of Shemaiah went to, and before they could finish their sentence, I'd go, oh, you mean the Hananiah who went to outside duties for David in 1 Chronicles, blah, blah, blah. And it would just drive them nuts. Before they could finish the question, I'd answer the question. Didn't always happen, but it happened a lot. Favorite thing in my life was stomping. And it wasn't because, it made me so exalted and it, people looked bad and all that kind of thing. But it was because I was getting to the goal. I wanted that goal. I wanted that bullseye of the target so bad. And it hurt people. I was a jerk, man. I would embarrass people. I didn't try to. It's just how it happened. I was just a jerk. I wasn't thinking and feeling other people's heart. So I would stay up. I remember one time they'd say, "Oh, teach us, Rabbi, teach us," and my back had gone out really bad. I mean, it was awful. And I went to a Jewish masseuse, and he gave me a massage. And then I went to the building. Our building was connected to where this guy was. He was a masseuse. And it was early on Shabbat, so after I had my massage and my back felt a little better, but it was still really bad. I went and I started, teaching the Torah, and Eileen was like, okay, yeah, that's enough. But people were asking questions. So I didn't care that my wife said, yeah, enough. I kept teaching. I taught on my back, lying flat on my back. And people still asked questions. Well, they were foolish to do that, but you know what? I was just as foolish to keep going. Because there's a mission, and I got to do the mission. It's a problem with apostles. All right, now let's talk about the sifting. Usually. Now remember, the matan is given to everybody. There are people who are apostles who aren't even believers. Just like there are prophets who are necromancers and Torah, what are they called? Tarot card readers. And they'll give you a reading and they'll talk to your dead relatives. That's strictly against the scriptures. Absolutely the wrong picture. But they're prophets. Works the same way with apostles. Apostles, they want to remove impurity. Now, if they're believers, they want to remove impurity from the heart. This was my obsession as well. People would get so mad at me in my previous congregation. They'd say, you don't know my heart. You don't know my heart. And they thought I was judging. But I wasn't judging. I was just a jerk about it. That's all. I was just immature and foolish. But I knew I saw something. I saw something out of order. And so I had to sift it. I had to sift it so that the good grain, the good thing in the heart could drop into a pile, and that junk would get caught in the sieve and we could throw it out. You don't have to worry about that anymore. All gone. You don't have to worry about it anymore. You're healed. You can be healed. Well, that was my motive. But I just didn't care about people. I cared about the mission, and that was the problem. But this is the motive for apostles. They want to get rid of that impurity in the heart. And we as apostles we don't see anything. We don't have all this amazing insight as to what's going to occur. And, we're not like prophets. We don't see off in the distance. We don't see anything. We just got to get from point A to point B. And the way we do that is more like a radar screen. It just goes around and around. Oh, there's something there. Do it again. Oh, okay, there's definitely something there. What is it? I don't know, but there's something there. Just like radar. Radar gives no specificity. It just tells you where something might possibly be, or definitely be. That's all it does. So that's why God puts together apostles and prophets. Apostles are obsessed with getting from here to there. We are sent out, shaliach, like an arrow, or a missile. But the apostle is not like a radar screen. They see every specific detail of what we can't see. And so usually God will put together an apostle and a prophet. I'm talking about from Torah. I'm not talking about from the New Testament. I'm talking about all the way back from Genesis. God did this. I'll show you this. Luke 11, Yeshua said this. The wisdom of God said, I will send them prophets and apostles. Some of them they will kill, and some of them they will persecute. This is all the people that were sent. From Enoch, seventh from Adam, all the way up to Yeshua and John the Immerser. That's what he's talking about. Throughout entirety of Jewish history, there have been apostles and prophets. Now in Ephesians 2:20, it says, having been built, the body of Messiah, having been built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets. Well, what I guess that means Thomas and Peter and John. No! It's talking about the apostles and prophets that Yeshua talked about. The Torah. You're going to not like this, I think. Judaism is the foundation. Judaism is the apostles and prophets. They gave us everything we needed to know. You didn't find the definition of agency, that the person sent out is the one that sent them. You didn't find that in Christianity. You saw that in Judaism. That's how it works. The foundation, the apostles and prophets, is the Tanakh. It's Judaism. Here's some more order. We go, we think, we see, we perceive, we intuit, small to large, slow to fast, weak to strong, simple to complex. There's order in size, in weight, in complexity, in logic, in speed, in direction, in time. These are the things that the apostle, that God put into the apostle to get the job done. It's that simple. Most apostles I've ever met are very down-to-earth people. They're not, real spiritual. Oh, my people, let me speak unto thee the words of God. They're not like that. They're more, that's a mission, I got to get that done. Well, let's talk about the details. Let's talk about, what's the weight? What's the complexity? How do we pack? I'm laughing because I remember, I'm going to tell you a story. How do we pack this van to get from point A to point B? I think a lot of movers, like people who move us when we got to move from house to house, I think a lot of them are apostles because it's logistics. It's getting from point A to point B, and you got to pack the van just right. I had a friend in my old congregation who was an apostle, great guy, really down-to-earth guy. I mean, just was normal, down-to-earth dude. I loved him. And we took a trip. We were going to move somebody. I don't know how this happened. It was a Jewish woman, I think, that we were going to move, her and her family, from here to Dallas. We packed that, or no, it was from Dallas to here. We packed that van where you couldn't put a credit card in between anything. We got everything in one vehicle. They said it couldn't be done. We took one look at it, went with all our calculations and our size and shape and form and order, and did it. And then we got her and her family from there to here. A lot of problems. We didn't care. It was like, okay, it's just another problem to get by. We got to get it done. We got it done. Well, when I moved from Arlington When I moved from here to Arlington, and then from Arlington back here to El Paso 5 years ago, I did the same thing. I packed a little car with everything that I needed to be by myself in Arlington, finishing up the TLV, the Tree of Life version of the Bible, and teaching school teaching art in a high school. For 4 months, I packed everything I needed into a little, like a station wagon, like a SUV. And you couldn't get a credit card between anything. But I did it. Because this is how we think. We think about the details, the size, the weight, the complexity, the logic, the speed, the direction, the time. This is how an apostle functions. Now, when it comes to the human heart, it's far more difficult. And we are relentless. And this is the problem. Just like the teacher cares about the information to the exclusion of everything else, the apostle thinks about the mission, getting to that point B to the exclusion of everything else. And it's a real problem. I damaged a lot of people. I hurt a lot of people. It's the biggest regret of my entire life, the way I treated people. God gave me on a silver platter. I know God doesn't give us stuff on a silver platter. He gave me and my wife a congregation. I mean, set it up with miracles that are just beyond belief. They're just stupid miracles. He started it, and in my zeal to accomplish the mission, I hurt people. And I swore I would never do that again. And I sat down for months and months and months, actually a few years, when I was going to Temple Mount Sinai, a Reformed Jewish congregation. For years, I fought and fought and fought and analyzed, how did I do that? Why did I do that? What was I doing? What did I do wrong? Why did I do that wrong? And I fixed, I think, all the problems in me. You know how I did it? Like an apostle. I sifted myself. It was hard, but I did it. And the problem with the apostle with the human heart is that they're like a lawyer, and they're not gonna stop. You know, they might be nice about it, but lawyers, what they do is they start with big questions that get smaller and smaller and smaller and tighter and tighter and more detailed until you find that thing. You find the truth. And then you're okay. Now, on the way to going from big to small, you find the lies. There's a lie. That's the impurities. And you can deal with them. You can get rid of them. But it takes a lot of questioning. How's John going to do that for you? How's Peter going to do that to you if there's no apostles now? It ain't going to happen. You're just going to go blithely along your life believing the same foolishness that you've always believed. But if an apostle can ask you big questions, smaller, we can identify those problem areas and get rid of them. But it's not going to happen with somebody, giving you a pat on the butt and saying, "Oh, I love you so much. You're fantastic. Just, be blessed. Be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might." It's not going to happen. Now, I'm going to show you the ultimate apostle. Relentless. Like a pit bull. Those jaws come down. By the way, a pit bull's jaws do not lock. That's a myth. They're just really good. They're tight. They got a lot of biting power, like a shark. They don't lock. They're not going to let go. Because it's in them to not let go. Like an apostle. It's hard to do. I mean, look at this. Look at that. Can you imagine doing that with a smile? But that's how it has to be done. But you gotta lock those, you gotta keep those jaws on there until the job is done. That's how Shaul was. I am convinced that if Christians met Paul, they would hate him. I think if we met this guy, we'd all hate him. I think if we met Yeshua, we'd hate him. He's not anything like what's been portrayed in Christianity. These guys were relentless. They don't let go. They don't stop. This is what Shaul said. 5 times I received from the Jews 39 stripes. That really means 13 stripes. Deuteronomy 25 says that when you discipline, makot, lay stripes on somebody, you can't do more than 39. This did not happen to Yeshua. He was whipped by Romans, not by Jews. And they just did it till their arm got tired. And it's done with a specific cord, like a 3-stranded cord is what's supposed to be done with, which is 13 stripes with a 3-stranded cord that's 39. Not anything like what's been shown. So he 5 times was beaten, 39 times by Jewish people. That means in a synagogue. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Nowhere in the Bible does it say to do that. That's Gentiles. Once I was stoned, but he lived. It's not like in the movies, like, let's throw some rocks. It's not like that. They pushed him off a cliff and then threw a big giant rock on top of him and then hit him with stones. And he lived through that. 3 times I was shipwrecked. This is not a small thing. 3 times. I was T-boned in my semi 3 times, and I lived. A night and a day he spent dog paddling in the water. That's 24 hours in the water with no food, no water. Sun beating down on you during the day. And nobody around to save you. I've been on frequent journeys. That's a big deal. That's dangerous. Back then, it was very dangerous. In danger from rivers, that means they had to cross some rivers that could have killed them. Dangers from robbers, dangers from my fellow Jews, dangers from Gentiles, dangers in, okay, yeah, we get it. But he goes on. Dangers in the city, dangers in the wilderness, in the desert, dangers on the sea, dangers among false brothers. Now, why is he saying all this? Okay, good for you. Oh, let's give him a pat on the back. He's so amazing. The book of 2 Corinthians is the most mocking, sarcastic book in the Bible. If you don't read it like that, you ain't reading it. He says in there stuff like, oh, you'll gladly be have your testicles cut off by false brothers. You'll gladly go through that little painful torture, but you won't even let me talk to you? Stuff like that. There's some really amazingly sarcastic and mocking passages in 2 Corinthians. And his point is, I'm the one who gave birth to you guys. And you're going to now turn against Judaism? That's what he's saying in this book over and over again. I gave you the foundation. I gave you the traditions, the paradosis. I gave you the foundation of Judaism, and now you're going to turn against it? And so he mocks them, and he makes fun of them, and he puts them down, and he tells them different stories of stuff that they did wrong. And he says, you know what? If I show up in person, you ain't going to like it. And he's really hard on them. Because it's 2 Corinthians, not 1 Corinthians. In 1 Corinthians, he's real nice. But in 2 Corinthians, the gloves are off. And now he's talking to him like an apostle with his authority. And he tells him, I did this for you, and I went through this, 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 and this, and he keeps going and going. And it's never enough. That's the apostle. They're relentless. They don't let go. Now, he is showing us, don't let go in love. Do it all in love. Extend yourself. Turn yourself inside out in love, for love. But don't lose your mind and become like a pit bull. It just like that. Be more like this. I'm going to do this, and then this, and then I'm going to stay on you. I'm not going to stop. We are going to get to the truth. This was all done in love for the people, to deliver them the truths of Judaism and Yeshua mixed together. So, in my mind, I mean, I only know it because he wrote it, but in my mind, Shaul is the ultimate apostle. He's the one. He's the one that got her, get her done, son. He got it done. I love this, but I hate it. I'll tell you what. I came up with this graphic from somebody else's graphic. This is a Greek mythological character called Sisyphus. And I've always loved that idea of this poor Sisyphus. His curse is he has to roll a giant rock uphill for all eternity. It's kind of stupid. I think it was come up with by an apostle. But really, this is it. This is the deal for the apostle. We're nothing. I mean, we're the ones that God drops behind enemy lines to get stuff done. Why? Because we're going to get it done. Come hell or high water, we're going to get it done. If we can get it done in love, fabulous, but we're going to get it done. This was also, I believe, written by an apostle. We'll try this first. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else. Isn't that life? I was watching this series on the History Channel about General U.S. Grant. Really down-to-earth, unassuming, broken man. And this man was broken. Just a real humble, messed up guy. And in all his battles, he was very calm. And he would go, let's try that. And a lot of it didn't work. And then he'd go, they would come at him and say, this didn't work. We're going to write newspaper articles and we're going to excoriate you in the public press. And they did. And it hurt him. It hurt him badly. And all of his generals would say, that didn't work. You're no good. You're not a good leader. And he'd go, well, let's try something else. What do you got? And I believe he was an apostle because of this. Apostles will try anything. Because how do you get that rock up the hill if you don't keep trying? The second you let go, it squashes you and it goes back down to the bottom of the hill and you're done. Never give up. Never give up. When I was a kid, and I had started doing Messianic artwork, and I would just pour hours and hours and hours and hours a day into it. I had a job and I was going to school, but I would spend every waking moment that I could doing Messianic Jewish artwork. And in summer, man, I'd stay up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning just doing art. All day, all night, just doing art. And one of my friends, Messianic Jewish lady, she did a decoupage for me that had a picture of Jerusalem, and it said, never give up. And I was like, why did she give me that? I don't get it. Because I didn't see myself as like this. I didn't see myself as somebody who never gave up. In my mind, I gave up all the time. And I was very ineffective, and I would feel sorry for myself, and I would just, I'd do it again, and again, and again, and again. But I didn't see that. I just saw that I failed. And I failed, and I failed, and I failed. But what other people saw was, man, this guy doesn't give up. He just gets up and does it again. I didn't see that. I see that now. So an apostle will try everything and anything to reach the goal. Now 2 Corinthians again, 12:12 says, the signs of a true apostle were done among you with all perseverance. In other words, we never gave up by signs and wonders and miracles. I've had signs and wonders and miracles, but I don't care. Now an evangelist goes out with this simple message and miracles pop out all over the place. And, it just happens for them. It's like a billboard, to get people involved and interested and aware. Apostles are not like that. Apostles are low key. We just get her done. We're just about the mission. But sometimes, especially if you're in the office, not the gift, but the office of an apostle, God will do signs and wonders and miracles for the office. Why? To accomplish the mission, to get it done. That's what's necessary right now. That's what we're going to do. Apostles don't care about, the numbers and the people and, let's get people interested. We don't care about that. Even the office of apostle isn't about that. It's about getting what needs to be done. If that's the need at the moment, that's what you do. We're not talking about that right now during the COVID problem. All the people that just jumped up and ran, nurses and healthcare workers and doctors and, people retooling their entire physical plant to make respirators, for God's sake. These are apostles. These are people that jump up and see the need. So that's what we do. That's all. It's not a big deal to us. That's what we do. So that's how apostles function. And it's in the gift the same way it is in the office. It's just mission driven. And here's what I said. Apostles are not big deal. We're not big stuff. We're the lowest. For I think that God has exhibited us, shown us, apostles, last of all, as men condemned to death. Now, I've heard this taught many, many, many times, straight out of Roman, Greek culture, and it is wrong. It is wrong. Everything in the New Testament, without exception, is in the Bible, first of all, which means it is connected to it is tethered to its root, which is Judaism. If it's not tethered to its root, it ain't in the Bible. God wouldn't put it in there. This is a Jewish book written by Jews for Jews. And if Gentiles come along, hey, fabulous. But it wasn't written to Gentiles. It was written to Jews from the Jewish culture. And this is no different. I've heard it taught maybe 40 times in as many years. That this was like this, when the Romans conquered a place, they would have a parade, and the ones in the very back were the men condemned to death. They're a spectacle unto the world. This is foolishness. This is from Judaism. The apostle is the last. Why? Because they're sent out. This is not a parade of people that got captured. This is people being sent out by God. Well, why are they last if they're being sent out? Because that's what's necessary. They're sent out last. They're sent out last. They're the last-ditch effort. They're condemned to death. But they're probably not going to come back from being sent out. That's okay. That's okay. I got it done. I remember, I'm such an idiot. When I finished the TLV Bible, I finished the TLV Bible really at the same time that I finished my big book. I completely rewrote my big book when all the pictures are restored. It's 1,060 pages. And I completely gutted it and rewrote it. Well, they finished about the same time. And I remember I was in Arlington, and I remember telling the kids, these poor high school kids, I would tell them, well, I can die now. And they'd say, why you say that, mister? Because I finished what I set out to do. I've illustrated the Bible. It was what I wanted to do since I got born again in 1979. All I wanted to do was illustrate the Bible. And I finished my magnum opus, my big work, which is when all the pictures are restored. And then I started saying that to other people. And then I moved back here and I kept saying it. I can die now. I'm done. I'm done. I got her done. And I was happy. And God kept me around. So I guess there's another mission. But that's how it is for the apostle. They're sent out like an arrow as a last-ditch effort. And we might not survive. Look at this. It became a spectacle to the world, both to angels and to men. You think that's from slaves being captured by Romans? That's Judaism. A spectacle, like, wow. How did you do that? How did you get that done? Shaul, Moshe, how did you, Joshua, how did you get them into the land? How did you win all those battles? This spectacle is amazing because they were sent out. Hananiah, how you and the Hebronites, how did you get the David's kingdom out to the Gentiles? How did you do that? It's amazing. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about the shlachim in the Bible. So we never give up. And that's really the bottom line. That's really all I can say about the apostle. This is this is probably the simplest, most down-to-earth of the 5 gifts. So really, you can't say a whole lot more than the down-to-earth things, the simple things that define the apostle. Now, here comes the song. I got the last verse on here, Count the Weeks, and it has all the doctrines that we've gone over for the last 7 weeks about counting the Omer, filling the measure, the 5 gifts, the whole story. That's why it's a long song. Who will go out to the field to gather up the harvest? Grain so white and waiting, into my house arise. Get up high upon a mountain, Zion Mevaseret. Proclaim it here, here is your God, Mashiach is alive. Count the weeks times 7, as we come as one to Sinai. Come and see the glory of the all-consuming fire. Sfirat HaOmer, fill the measure of Messiah. To each of us was given a gift to lift the body higher. Who will thresh out all my grain with gentleness and mercy? Bind the wounds of all my broken-hearted and ignored. Shepherd, feel the feelings of those wandering on the mountain, carrying the lambs upon the shoulders of the Lord. Who will roast the heads of grain in my house of profit? Fire that burns, a fire of words, touch every single grain. Eyes that see into that day, Bayom Hahu, my kingdom. Burning hearts in Teshuvah and clinging to my name. Count the weeks times 7 as we come as one to Sinai. Come and see the glory of the all-consuming fire. Sfirat HaOmer, fill the measure of Messiah. To each of us was given a gift to lift the body higher. Who will winnow in my house, remove the chaff in Zion? Wind across the grain that drops as chaff is blown away. Teachers' doctrines separate the details of the Torah, the good and bad, the right and wrong of walking in my way. Who will sift, who will refine, who will perfect the flour through the sieves? Fill the measure and Omer for each day. Shaliach, the one sent out to be the one who sent him. Perfect the body, sick the bad from walking in his way. Count the weeks times 7 as we come as one to Sinai. Come and see the glory of the all-consuming fire. Sfirat HaOmer, fill measure of Messiah. To each of us was given a gift to lift the body higher. To each of us was given a gift to lift the body higher. Well, I hope that you have figured out what your gift is, and I hope that you've figured out how to identify the gifts in others so that we can work together to fill the Omer. Tomorrow is Shavuot, when the Torah and the Spirit are one. The Torah was given to Israel at Mount Sinai on Shavuot, and the Holy Spirit was given in the temple on Shavuot in the New Testament in Acts chapter 2. The Torah and the Spirit are one. Shabbat Shalom.